Welcome to the Wisdom That Breathes channel. Across all our platforms, we try to share wisdom which is relevant and accessible to everyone. But on this particular platform, we go deeper into some of the ancient principles found within the scriptures. If you find some of the terminology difficult or inaccessible, then go over to our Keshava Swami YouTube channel where you'll be able to find other content which is perhaps more relatable. Thank you and enjoy the wisdom that breathes.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. So I thought this morning, as we continue talking about the triggers of transformation, we could begin by singing this very reflective song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur from Gitavali. In English, they have a saying, when you're happy, you hear the tune, and when you're sad, you hear the lyrics. But the Vaishnavas hear both. So the lyrics of this song are very, very powerful, very reflective, very deep. And we know that the songs of the Vaishnava Acharyas are so transformational because they combine the deep philosophy of Krishna consciousness with the heartfelt emotions of realization through life's experiences. And that combination is incredibly powerful. So we can sing this song, hear the tune, but also register the lyrics and the meaning. Anadi karma phale. The reactions of beginningless karma. Anadi karma phale padi bhavar nara jale. Anadi karma phale padi bhavar nara. Anadi karma phale padi bhavar nara jale. Anadi karma Tori bara na dekhi upaya. Tori bare na dekhi upaya. Vishaya hale hale divani shiya jale. Vishaya hale divani shiya jale. Vishaya hala hale divani shiya jale. Mana kabu sukha nahi paya. Mana kabu sukha nahi paya. Asha pasha sata sata klesha deya virata. प्रवृत्ति उमेराता है खेला. प्रवृत्ति और मेरा तो है खेला. काम क्रोधादि छाया. काम क्रोधा आदि छाया बाता पदे देया भाया. Avasana hoilo asibela. Avasana hoilo asibela. Jnana karma thaga dui more pratariya loyo. Avasheshe fele sindhu jale. Avasheshe fele sindhu jale. Eheno samaye bandhu tumi Krishna kripa sindhu. Kripa kori tolo more bale. Kripa kori koro more bale. Patita kinkare dhari pada padma dhula kori patita kinkare dhori pada padma dhula kori Deho bhakti vinodashraya Deho bhakti vinodashraya Amitava nitya das bhuliya mayara pajami Amitava nitya das bhuliya mayara paj Bada hoye achi daya maya Bada hoye achi daya maya Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Jaya Vaishnava Thakur. Jaya Vaishnava Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur. Vaishnav Thakur, Jaya Vaishnava Thakur. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Jaya Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yata Padakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha kalpatarobhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai, Grantharaj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. take this. Hare Krishna, everyone. So, good morning. Yes, so this is a very, very reflective song from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as so many of his songs are, reflecting on his life and everything that's happened, and pretty much talking about the futility of living in the material world and trying to be happy here. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, this world is no place for a gentleman or a gentle lady. You do your business and then you get out. One time Srila Prabhupada, he was walking, morning walk or something to that effect, and he saw a garbage truck. So for Prabhupada it was a revelation, a garbage truck. So he asked the devotee, like, what is the meaning of this? So they said, Prabhupada, this is the garbage truck. It comes along every single day and it picks up, the garbage in front of the houses and it tips it in. And then Prabhupada said they should put the whole material world in the garbage truck, not just the dustbin at the front of the house. He said it's no place actually. It's an embarrassing place actually, the material world. Just like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur compared the material world to a lavatory, which is kind of like it's an embarrassing place. So the material world is like that. We are foiled, we are frustrated at every moment. We realize the precariousness of our existence. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur really brings this out in this song. And I decided today to start with this song because this will be our next trigger of transformation. So just to recap, we've been discussing what we can learn from the stories of the Bhagavatam in terms of how it helps us to understand what we may need to do to speed up our journey. And so we've been talking about different triggers, and obviously these triggers all work in tandem, all work together. Yesterday we talked about transformation and the trigger of instruction, and like this we are going through all these different triggers one by one. So yesterday, yes, we talked about the story of Sutta and the sages at Naimisharanya. We talked about the first canto and the 3 different dialogues which teach us about the qualification of someone who really wants to absorb the instructions that are given. Shabda Brahman, this is the Supreme Lord in the form of sound vibration, comes to enter our heart, penetrate. It's very, very powerful. And we talked about the culture of how to actually become a good hearer and the culture of actually hearing Bhagavatam so that it can really be transformational. Then we talked about transformation by issue. We talked about the roller coaster journey of Chitraketu's life and how he went through ups and downs and how his realization that this world is just a river of names, constantly flowing, the waves, the ups and the downs, and all of this is doing is jolting us out of our comfortable situation in the material world and ultimately bringing us to real comfort, which is internal comfort in our consciousness of Krishna. And so today we are beginning with the next trigger of transformation, which I call transformation by impossibility. This is a picture of Queen Kunti. Queen Kunti is a very, very celebrated personality within the Bhagavatam, especially in 1962, Srila Prabhupada translated the first canto of the Bhagavatam, the first volume, which had the prayers of Queen Kunti. And 10 years later, in 1972, Srila Prabhupada gave a series of lectures on the prayers of Queen Kunti. And later on, that was published into a book, which is now widely distributed. And these prayers of Queen Kunti are perhaps prayers which are the most recited by Srila Prabhupada, perhaps after the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj. The prayers of Kunti really come up again and again. And if you look closely at the prayers of Queen Kunti, they reveal a very deep realization that clearly she had, because it seems to come up again and again as a common theme within her prayers. As you know, Queen Kunti was a personality who was placed in the middle of complete complexity. She had her own son, she had her nephews, and she was in the middle of the whole thing, observing this complex situation in Hastinapur between the Kuru dynasty. And Queen Kunti saw everything. She saw everything that her sons had to go through, the Pandavas. It's said in the world that there are different things which can protect you. Dharma protects you. Punya protects you. Bala, strength, protects you. Nepunya, intelligence, protects you. Dhana, wealth, protects you. Surit, friends, protect you. So in Vedic culture, they said there are different things that if you introduce in your life, they will protect you. If you look at the Pandavas, they had all of this. Dharma, perfect. Perfect followers of Dharma. Bala, perfect strength, incredible strength. Just look at what they were able to do. Bhima, Arjun, these were powerful people. Punya, they did all sacrifices. They followed all the Vedic injunctions. Nepunya, intelligence, of course. Pandavas knew Shastra, they knew. They were constantly interfacing with the sages. Surit, friends. What to speak of friends? The Pandavas had the best friend. Krishna was their constant companion. Suridam, Sarvabhutanam. But he was personally present with them. Queen Kunti looked at the Pandavas and she said, you had all the protectors. There was no reason why you should have had to go through anything in this world. But you went through the most turbulent ride. You went through the most complex situations. You faced the most reversals. Queen Kunti had a deep realization that this world is not a nice place. That this world is a complex place. And if you look at Queen Kunti's prayers, so many of her prayers are conveying this deep detachment from the material world. She will pray in one prayer, Ata Vishvesha Vishvatman. What is the next line of that? Ata Vishvesha Vishvatman. Vishvamurte Svakeshu me Snehapa Shamimam Chindi Dridam Pandushuvrishnishu. She prays, Krishna, sever my tie of affection for my family members. I don't want anything now to again bind me to this world again. She will pray, Tvai me nanya vishaya matir madhu pate sakrit rati mudvahatad adha gangevo gumadanvati. She'll say, Krishna, I want my bhakti to flow towards the Ganga without any obstruction, just as the Ganges flows towards the ocean, and anything which comes in its way, it just goes round it, and it just rushes towards the ocean. In the same way, let not anything of this material world now impede me. I don't want anything to come in my way in terms of material concern. Queen Kunti will pray, Vipada shantutah shashvat tatra tatra jagat guru bhavato darshanam yadshyat apunar bhavadarshanam. Krishna, she says, Krishna, just send me more and more calamities, because bhavato darshanam yadshyat, these calamities allow me to remember you, to be in consciousness of you. And when we're in consciousness of you, then it means I don't have to come to this material world again. Just pray for more and more anxieties. The modern translation of that is just take up a leadership position. Yeah. If you want to make that prayer in a practical way. Padashantu, send me more and more calamities. Again, deep detachment. And then Kunti will pray, Janmeshwarya Shruta Shribhir Edaman Amadapuman Nirvarhatya Bidatum Ve Tvamakinchana Gocharam. She'll say, Krishna, I've realized now, no one can ever be sincere in their devotion towards you if they are still concerned with advancement of material things. They have to become completely akinchana bhakta, which means, kinchana means something, akinchana means nothing. Someone who wants nothing to do with this world, someone who has become completely materially exhausted. Can you see how through the prayers of Queen Kunti there is a deep realization which keeps coming through? I don't want anything to do. This world is an impossible place. I don't want anything to do with this world. So this is her deep realization. We may say spiritual life is difficult, but Queen Kunti has realized 100% that material life is impossible. And this is a very, very important trigger for transformation. Because sometimes we have to transform ourselves not simply by focusing on the positives of what we should do, but being thoroughly convinced that diverting our attention anywhere else is absolutely useless. Therefore, Krishna does this in the Bhagavad-Gita when he wants to convince Arjuna to fight. He gives him all the arguments why he should fight. And then what does Krishna do? He says, by the way, if you want the alternative, let me tell you what the alternative is. And then Krishna goes on to explain what the alternative for Arjuna is if he doesn't want to fight. And Arjuna's kind of like, okay, Krishna, I think I'll do it. So this is another way to become convinced when you realize that there's no point diverting my attention anywhere else because it's not going to work. But transformation becomes very, very difficult when we still have other options that we think could work. And so, Queen Kunti prays. You can repeat after me. Namo kinchana vitaya nivrita gunavrittaye atma ramaya shantaya Kaivalya pataye namaha Namo kinchana vitaya nivrita gunavrittaye atma ramaya shantaya Kaivalya pataye namaha. She says, my obeisance is unto you, Krishna, who are the property of the materially impoverished, those who have become completely exhausted, who no longer have any more faith in the material world. She says, you, Krishna, you've become their property. You have nothing to do with the actions and reactions of the material modes of nature. You are self-satisfied, and therefore you are the most gentle and are master of the monists. So Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, a living being is finished as soon as there is nothing to possess. Therefore, a living being cannot be, in the real sense of the term, a renouncer. A living being renounces something for gaining something more valuable. A student sacrifices his childish proclivities to gain better education. A servant gives up his job for a better job. Similarly, a devotee renounces the material world, not for nothing, but for something tangible in spiritual value. Srila Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami and others gave up their worldly pomp and prosperity for the sake of service to the Lord. Advancement of material vision or material civilization is a great stumbling block for spiritual advancement. Such material advancement entangles the living being in a bondage of a material body, followed by all sorts of material miseries. Such material advancement is called anartha, or things not wanted. Actually, this is so. In the present context of material advancement, one uses lipstick at a cost of 50 cents. And there are so many unwanted things which are all products of the material conception of life. By diverting attention to so many unwanted things, human energy is spoiled without achievement of spiritual realization, the prime necessity of human life. The attempt to reach the moon is another example of spoiling energy. Because even if the moon is reached, the problems of life will not be solved. The devotees of the Lord are called the Kinchanas because they have practically no material assets. Such material assets are all products of the three modes of material nature. They foil spiritual energy, and thus the less we possess such products of material nature, the more we have a good chance for spiritual progress. So here Prabhupada is explaining that the more you get involved with the material energy, the more you invest your hopes, your dreams, your ideas of success in the material energy, the more life will become more and more complex, and the more you will be diverted from spiritual realization. You all know the story of the sadhu who went to the bank of the Ganga to chant. And as he put his hand in his bead bag, then he was just about to start chanting, and he thought to himself, I'm about to start chanting, but what will I wear tomorrow? I need to plan a little bit. I need to have the basic necessities of life. And so he realized, okay, just before I start chanting, let me just make sure I have fresh cloth for tomorrow. So he obtained some cloth and washed it, and then hung it up there on the line next to him. And then he sat down peacefully to chant, because after all, his problem had been solved. And as he put his hand in his bead bag, then he heard a sound of scratching. And he looked and he saw, and there was a mouse which was eating away at his dhoti, which was drying in the midday sun. And he thought, oh no, I need to chant, but I need a pair of clothes. And for a fresh pair of clothes, I got this dhoti, but now the mouse is eating it. So therefore he thought, okay, let me just solve this problem. And then you know what he did? He got a cat. Because the cat keeps the mouse away so that the cloth can dry, so that he can have a pair to wear tomorrow, so he can chant in peace. So there you go, problem solved. He sat down, and then he heard another sound as he began chanting, the sound of the cat calling out, meow, meow. Then he realized, oh no, the cat needs some energy to do its work, so it needs to be milked. It needs some milk. So in order to get milk, then I need a cow. So then he got a cow so that he could get milk, so that the cat could get its food, so that it could keep the rat away, so that the cloth could remain dry, and that he could then peacefully chant, knowing that tomorrow. Anyway, we could go on and on. You catch the drift here. As soon as you begin getting involved with the material energy, it becomes more and more complex. Some problems can't be solved. Many problems just have to be tolerated. Because if you try to solve them with one solution, then that solution will complicate you more and more and implicate you more and more in the material world. And therefore, detachment in spiritual progress is very, very important, but must be intelligently understood. Detachment is not an anga of bhakti. Detachment is not the goal, but detachment may well be an important ingredient in our journey if we want to advance. If you look at the Bhagavad-Gita and the Srimad-Bhagavatam, then you will see that there is a striking similarity in how they are actually formulated and presented to the world. In English, they say history repeats itself. So if you look at the Bhagavatam and the Gita, it's very, very interesting. The Bhagavatam and the Gita both have an outer narrative. The outer narrative of the Bhagavad-Gita is Dhritarashtra asking, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do on the battlefield? And the end of the narrative is him getting his answer. Wherever there is Krishna, there will always be victory. So basically, they're going to lose. So the outer narrative of the Gita is about events. And the outer narrative of the Bhagavatam is also about events. Because in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, we're hearing about how Parikshit gets cursed. And right at the end of the Bhagavatam, we're hearing what happens after 7 days, Parikshit dies. So, events, the outer narrative. But the Bhagavatam and the Gita also have an inner narrative. So there's an inner narrative of philosophy. There's an inner narrative of spiritual dialogue. And that inner narrative in the Bhagavad-Gita takes place between Krishna and Arjuna. Many, many philosophical points are coming out. And the inner narrative of the Bhagavatam, beyond the events of what's happening to Parikshit, the inner narrative is Parikshit's conversation with Sukadev. So, philosophy. Now, the Bhagavad-Gita has a preface. It's called chapter 1. Because that chapter doesn't actually necessarily give any philosophy, or philosophical dialogue. It just deals with the events leading to how the conversation took place. And if you look in the Bhagavatam, it also has a preface. It's called Canto 1. Because the conversation between Sukadev and Parikshit doesn't really begin until the second canto. Just like the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna doesn't really begin until the second chapter. There is a question in each of these books that triggers the whole philosophical dialogue. The question asked by Arjuna in the 7th verse of the second chapter, where he essentially asks, what is my duty? Because I'm dharma shamuda, I'm confused about my duty. That is the question which then triggers the whole dialogue. In the same way, at the end of the first canto, Parikshit asks a question. What is that question? What is the duty of someone who is about to die, and what is the duty of all people at all times? And in response to that query, the whole philosophical dialogue of the Bhagavatam takes place. In both of these texts, there is a summary which is given to the answer, given to the question. So after Arjuna asks his question, then what Krishna does in chapter 2 is he summarizes the answer immediately. That's why the second chapter of the Gita is called Contents of the Gita Summarized. But the second canto of the Bhagavatam, if you look at it, between the first and the third chapter of the Bhagavatam, Sukadev Goswami basically gives the whole philosophy of the Bhagavatam and comes to the culmination immediately. He actually says everything he needs to say. And just like Arjuna, after Krishna has said anything, says, no, hang on, I got some more questions here. And then chapter number 3 begins. In the same way, after Sukadev answers the question in 3 chapters, then Parikshit comes again and says, hang on, I've got some more questions. And therefore the Bhagavatam continues on. The essence of the Bhagavad-Gita is right in the middle, isn't it? Because it's said that right in the middle we hear about Bhakti. And the essence of the Bhagavatam is also in the middle, because it's in the 10th canto. And if you look, the 10th, 11th and the 12th cantos of the Bhagavatam comprise pretty much half of the Bhagavatam. And that means that 3.5 days into the dialogue between Sukadev and Parikshit is probably about when they began to discuss the 10th canto, which is the essence of the Bhagavatam. So we can also say the 10th canto is right in the middle, because that's the essence. Just like in the Gita, Bhakti is right in the middle. Again, similarities. And the final wisdom that's given after the essence of the Bhagavad-Gita and the Bhagavatam is given is all about jnana. Therefore, the final 6 chapters from 13 to 18 of the Bhagavatam are all about jnana yoga. And in the same way, in the Bhagavatam, after the 10th canto is spoken, the 11th and 12th canto of the Bhagavatam are also chapters which are giving a lot of gyan. The 11th canto is basically Uddhava Gita, which is Krishna's teachings to Uddhav as he prepares to renounce the world. And the 12th canto of the Bhagavatam is all about the annihilation of the world and how Parikshit is now preparing to give up everything as he faces his final test. And the ultimate instruction of the Gita is given right at the end. Krishna says, Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. So right at the end, Krishna says the final instruction. And in the same way, the very final verse of the Bhagavatam, Nama sankirtanam yasya sarva papa pranashanam. That one should just simply engage in the chanting of the holy name, because this is the only way to counteract the influence of Kali Yuga. So isn't it interesting? The Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad-Gita, when you look at how they're presented in exactly the same way. It's just that the Bhagavatam is a more detailed, more comprehensive, and a more devotionally, kind of, you can say in one sense, illuminating through the accounts, narrative. Now my question to you is about this, the final wisdom. Why do you think it is in the Bhagavad-Gita that after Krishna has spoken the essence, Krishna then speaks another 6 chapters of Jnana Yoga? Why didn't he just stop? My question to you is, after Sukadev narrated all about the sweetness of Krishna in the 10th canto, why wasn't that the culmination? Why after that did he then go on to talk about Jnana Yoga? Why is it that both of these dialogues, in their final wisdom that they give, talk about Jnana Yoga or knowledge and detachment? Why do you think that is? Any ideas? Why not just end with the essence? Yes? Okay, so because people can't go step by step, because people can't go in immediately one go, then they should go step by step, okay? But still my question to you is, why is that the last thing that's said? You could give that step by step immediately. Yes, Maharaj? I think Sachinanda Maharaj behind you.
So the main body of wisdom has been given already in the Bhagavad-Gita and in the Bhagavatam. Now the question, why jnana? Well, if you have wisdom, you need to apply it. And the application for us here in this world who are entangled is that we look towards the world and see what it is. Jnana rests on Sankhya, the understanding of the elements which this world is made of. And once you go into the understanding of the elements, you become attached. Like when a body may look so beautiful, but when you look at what it is made of, the organs, the stool, the slime, the mucus, when the mind looks like a beautiful mind, but oops, you find out there are so many ugly qualities also in there. Then you become detached, and this Bhakti is always there. 2 Shaktis working. the attractive Shakti, it's called Paraka Shakti. It pulls us towards Krishna. And then Taraka Shakti, which it means liberation. You must be free from what? From Krishna? No, from the world. So that is for practical life in this world. Yes. It's a philosophical speculation, but that's my assumption.
Thank you, Maharaj. Yes, there are these Shaktis, the Paraka Shakti, so the essence of these literatures are pulling us towards Krishna. And then these other parts of the Bhagavatam are helping us to disconnect ourselves from the immediate complexity. So in this way, this could be another explanation. Anyone else have any other ideas why this final wisdom is there? Yes?
It's like you have to understand what the goal is first before you understand the means of getting there. So like in the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna talks about bhakti in the middle before talking about the modes of material nature. And we understand we have to come to the platform of goodness before we can go to pure goodness and pure devotion. So that's a thought.
Yes. So this is also a strategy of teaching. In the world today, it's been documented by someone called Simon Sinek, who wrote the book Start With Why. And what he makes the point is that one should understand the goal first, and then what one can do is unpack the how and the what. And so in one sense, what Krishna's strategy often is when delineating something to the conditioned souls is he gives the vision of where we're trying to go, and then he'll come back and say, this is the how and what of how you progress from where you are currently to get to that place. Yeah, very good. Okay.
Well, it's also what I thought about, also philosophical speculation, that we get the experience of bhakti in Gita and Bhagavatam, and afterwards it's made sure we don't confuse or mix up that experience with this material world, to make sure this is something totally different, spiritual. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, so there is, we talk about the essence, which is all about spiritual emotion and spiritual experience and ananda, bliss. And then extra knowledge is given to us to ensure that we don't misunderstand the emotions or experiences of this world and kind of somehow bring that very high thing down to the material level, like that. Yeah. Yeah, good. Yeah, like this, it's very, very important to understand that this knowledge that Krishna gives at the end of the Gita and the Bhagavatam is very, very important for us. And so, detachment, although not a anga of bhakti, as I said, is something which is very, very much a part of Krishna consciousness. In the Shastra, you'll find different things said about detachment. Sometimes it will say detachment is the result of bhakti. You don't have to try for detachment separately. If you practice bhakti, then detachment will come automatically. You will also read in Shastra that detachment is something you should cultivate because it's supportive to bhakti. And you will also read in Shastra that detachment is dangerous to bhakti. This is why Shastra is so complex, because it takes place on many, many levels and it illuminates something from many, many different angles. So one perspective is that detachment is a result of bhakti. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayate Shuvairagyam Jnanam Cha Yadahaitukam. This is a very, very famous verse from the second chapter, Divinity and Divine Service, that when you render devotional service, then detachment comes automatically. You don't need to try for it. You'll become detached automatically. But the Bhagavatam will also tell us that detachment is something we can cultivate. Save nivriti dharmena vasudevanukampaya bhagavad bhakti yogena tridhote saneriha. This is coming from the 3rd canto of the Bhagavatam. But that misconception of self-identity can be diminished gradually by the mercy of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, through the process of devotional service to the Lord in the mode of detachment. In other words, when one is practicing spiritual life, they have to engender detachment. It's something that we have to cultivate. It's something that we have to consciously work on. And then the Bhagavatam will also tell us that detachment can be dangerous to bhakti. Yadrichaya matkatado jata shraddhastu ya puman na nirvino nati shakto bhakti yoga syasiddhida. If somehow or other by good fortune one develops faith in hearing and chanting my glories, such a person, being neither very disgusted nor very much attached to material life, should achieve perfection through the path of loving devotional service to me. Oops. So here it says that one should not be too much detached. Because if you become too much detached, then that is also a stumbling block to one's bhakti. Because too much detachment makes the heart hard. And therefore one cannot. He said that one time one man, he came to a sadhu and he said, yes, I think I'm ready for sannyas. The sadhu said, why? He said, because my wife died and I didn't cry. So the sadhu looked at him and he said, go back and get married again. He said, because if you can't cry for your wife, if you can't cry for relationships of affection, if you're so hard-hearted that you feel no emotion towards those who have been so much part of your life, if you can't cry for them, how will you cry for Krishna? And if you can't cry for Krishna, what's the meaning of your renunciation? What's the meaning of your detachment? And so, detachment has to be understood in a very, very balanced way. But the point is made here that a trigger of transformation is definitely that when one has a deep realization that I have nothing to do in this world. I've lost all faith in the material world. Because what Krishna says in the Gita, Bhogeshvarya prashaktanam taya parita chaitasham vyavasayatmika buddhi samado nuvidiyate. That the resolute determination for devotional service can never take place while one is still attached to bhoga, enjoyment, and aishvarya, opulence. And so, through Kunti, we're learning that one trigger of transformation is when one has a deep realization that I don't want to be in this world anymore. And when one becomes so materially exhausted, not in a way that makes their heart hard, but in a way which makes them call out to Krishna with sincerity. When one has that level of detachment, then it becomes a very, very beautiful trigger to transformation. And so this is another way we can transform by impossibility, because we realize spiritual life is difficult, but material life is impossible. Yes, I'm struggling. Yes, I'm falling again and again. Yes, sometimes the goal seems very, very far away, but there's no other options. I must walk this path, because otherwise I'll just be left in no man's land. I can't go back now. I must keep walking forward. And when it's like a drain pipe, if there's a drain pipe and water is going through it, there may be many, many holes in it. And therefore, the pressure at the end is very, very less. But when one closes all of those holes, then the volume and the gush of that water just comes out so much more powerfully. So one's bhakti is like that. Then when one closes all the doors and one realizes there's nowhere else to look, there's nowhere else to try, there's nothing else to endeavor for, And when one has that firm conviction, then as Queen Kunti is saying, Gange Vogum Adanvati, then your bhakti will run to Krishna, not being diverted by anything else, not going in any other direction. And so, in a measured way, detachment is also a trigger of transformation, because it allows one, that material exhaustion allows one to call out to Krishna with great sincerity. Let me go on to one more trigger of transformation, and then we'll open up for some questions. We've talked so far about the trigger of instruction, we've talked about the trigger of issue, we've talked about the trigger of detachment, and now we come to something that happens in the Bhagavatam again and again, the trigger of transformation by interaction. Devotees are dangerous. Keep a safe distance. This is Narad Muni. And Narad Muni, this is Narad Muni on a successful day at the office. Narad Muni, as he does, was traveling all around, and this pastime is given in the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam. As we know, there are different topics in the Bhagavatam, as was mentioned yesterday. And one of the topics is Visharga, secondary creation. So what happens in the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam is that Parikshit and Sukadeva are having a discussion. And the discussion of secondary creation comes up. How was the universe populated? So then we begin to hear about the Prachetas who go underwater for 10,000 years to do their austerities. And then later on from the Prachetas comes Prajapati Daksha. And Prajapati Daksha is a progenitor, the father of mankind, tasked with the responsibility to increase the population in the world. And so Prajapati Daksha is desiring to increase the population in the world. So he begins to have certain progeny, but somehow or other it's just not working out. Family planning issues, it's just not happening. Therefore he decides to go and perform sacrifice, prayers. He offers the Hamsa Guya prayers. And from there he is blessed. He marries a Shikni, and they have 10,000 sons, and those sons are known as the Savalashvas. And Prajapati Daksha is over the moon, because he feels now 10,000 sons, multiply 10,000 by however many children they're going to have. That's a lot of offspring. That's good. That's wonderful. The population will increase now, undoubtedly. So, before these sons go into performing their duty of going into family life and having children, they first go to a place called Narayana Saras. Because before one begins anything in this world, there has to be a period of preparation. And before one goes into Grihastha ashram, there's always a period of preparation. Therefore, Brahmachari Gurukule Vasandanta Guroritam Acharan Dasavan Nicho Guru Sudrida Saurida. The Bhagavatam tells us that one should spend some time in austerity before going into that life. Why? Because one will learn Acharan, good character. Dashavan, one will learn to be a servant. Nicho, one will become very humble. Like this, one develops their character so they can perform whatever their duties are in the world. So they all go to this beautiful place, 10,000 sons, impeccable character, impeccable culture, so qualified. Enter Narad Muni. I mean, this is a feast for his eyes. 10,000 young, qualified, incredibly cultured individuals. And Narad Muni just can't resist. He has to just speak what's in his heart. And he says, what are you doing? Who are you and why are you here? They say who they are. He's happy. They say why they're here. And he thinks, maybe I can show them another way. And therefore they say, we've come here to do austerities because we're about to enter into Grihastha life. And Narad Muni tells them, did you know there's another path? There's another option. There's another way. You don't have to do this. Even though the world may tell you that this is what everyone does, you don't have to do this. And the Bhagavatam says, Narad Muni with his enigmatic speech tells them through a beautiful metaphor the complexities of the world. And just by contact with Narad Muni and his enigmatic speech, the Savalashvas realize, maybe he's right. Maybe we can just circumvent this whole thing. Maybe we can just direct, beeline towards Krishna. And they all decide to renounce. In one go, 10,000 brahmacharis in one go. It was a clean hit. Prajapati Daksha finds out and he is livid. He is so angry. He criticizes Narad Muni but he has to go back to the drawing board. So he does, and he has another 1,000 sons. The first sons were the Haryashvas, I think, right? And the second 1,000 sons were the Savalashvas. So the second 1,000 sons come to the same place to do the same thing with the same intention. And the same Narad Muni turns up. It's like if you go on Sankirtan and you had a good day somewhere, then you like I'll go there another day, you know, it was a good day last time, I'll go there again. So Narad Muni comes again and he sees another 1,000 sons and he just can't resist. So he just does the same thing again. And by interaction with him, those second 1,000 sons also just decide to renounce everything. And this angers Daksha even more. And finally he curses Narad Muni that for this injustice, for this terrible thing you have done, I curse you that you will have to keep traveling. Narad Muni is like, brilliant. So happy. It's great. So, like this, by interaction with Narad Muni, someone's consciousness is changed. This is the power of associating with a saintly person. This verse is found in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. You can repeat after me. Tatodu sangam utsrijya satsu sajjeta buddhiman Shanta evasya chindanti manovya sangamuktibi. An intelligent person should therefore reject all bad association and instead take up the association of saintly devotees whose words cut off the excessive attachment of one's mind. So it said the words of a sadhu are razor sharp. Mano vyasangam uktibi. By association with a saintly person and by hearing the words from that saintly person's mouth, by interaction with that energy, one can immediately, their attachments can be severed. It's interesting, Aristotle, when he talks about the power of persuasion, he says one is able to persuade and influence others if they have three things: logos, ethos, and pathos. Logos means when one's speech is incredibly logical, is watertight. All the arguments make perfect sense and nobody can intellectually argue with it. When one speaks with logos, then it has power. Then on top of that, if one has ethos, ethos means one character. If one is actually living what they're saying, if they're actually walking the talk, if they actually have good character, if they embody everything that they seek to share with the world, then he said that that character empowers their speech even more. And then he says, if on top of that one has pathos, pathos means the ability to ignite and stimulate other people's emotions, almost the charisma that someone has. Then he says their power of persuasion and influence is even greater. In spiritual terms, we could say logos refers to Shastra. Because there can be nothing more logical, nothing more intellectually powerful, nothing more watertight, nothing more convincing than the arguments of Shastra. And therefore, if there's a person who knows Shastra, then their speech is incredibly powerful. Ethos, in spiritual terms, we can say refers to sadachar. So if someone knows Shastra, but at the same time they have good behavior, they have incredible character, then their speech is even more powerful. Therefore, Sanatana Goswami, he glorifies Haridas Thakur. Achar prachar karahadui karya, tumi sarva guru, tumi jagater arya. You're the spiritual master of the whole world, not just because prachar, not just because you know Shastra and you speak it, but because achar, your character, your conduct is also very, very good. And in spiritual terms, if logos is Shastra, if ethos is sadachar, what do you think pathos is? Devotion? Yes? Louder? Purity? Bhakti? Bhava? Could be all of these. I thought of Shakti. If one is empowered, Krishna Shakti Vinana He Tara Pravartan. If one is empowered, if one has been blessed with Shakti, then they have the power to reach people in incredible ways. How was Prabhupada empowered to just reach people in incredible ways? It wasn't just logos and ethos. It wasn't just that he knew Shastra and that he was practicing himself, but he was specially empowered. And when one interacts with someone who has these three things, when one hears from such personalities, then it can trigger incredible transformation. And so, one way in which we see transformation happens again and again is because one becomes wise enough in their life to surround themselves with very, very powerful people. And these powerful individuals, just by being in their vicinity, here we're talking about the Haryashvas and the Savalashvas who are transformed by interaction of hearing Narad Muni, but sometimes it doesn't even require hearing. Sometimes just by being in the midst of someone who's incredibly powerful, your heart becomes changed. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came to Varanasi, and Chandrasekhar and Tapan Mishra were like the lone bhaktas in a forest of Mayavadis. And therefore, Mahaprabhu was being criticized there, that he is just emotional, he is just sentimental, being criticized by the Mayavadi sannyasis in Varanasi. So eventually Mahaprabhu decided to go to Varanasi, and eventually he decided to go and meet the Mayavadi sannyasis. So the Mayavadi sannyasis didn't have much appreciation for Mahaprabhu. They had seen him from a distance, they had heard the reports that he was chanting and dancing, and in their estimation this was just frankly a waste of time. He's a sannyasi, he should be studying Vedanta. But what did his spiritual master tell him? You don't have any qualification to study Vedanta, just chant. So he was following his spiritual master's instructions. They were not impressed. So Mahaprabhu decided to go and see them. So when Mahaprabhu entered into the midst of the Mayavadi sannyasis,
something incredible happened even before he started speaking to them. It's said that they saw his beauty, they saw his effulgence. I mean, they were Mayavadis, like they're into the Brahmajyoti. But when they saw Mahaprabhu's effulgence, they were impressed. And they saw his humility. It's said simply by perceiving these three things, without even hearing what he had to say, already their heart was transformed. The narration in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is very interesting. They look at Mahaprabhu, they look at his beauty, his effulgence, his humility, and you know what they say? They say, we don't know what you're about to tell us, but we know that your words will never be false. In other words, they had already accepted within their heart whatever he was going to say before he even said it. Because the very power of his being was already transformational to them. That's the power of interaction. Just by coming in the midst of someone who's incredibly advanced. Rupa Goswami explains in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that bhava is contained within different receptacles. And he said one receptacle of bhava is the dham. But another receptacle of bhava is the Vaishnav. And in these receptacles of bhav, they're overflowing. So anyone who comes in the vicinity of these two, even if they are not qualified, they may begin to experience bhav because the bhav is overflowing from this receptacle. So when one comes in the midst of such an established personality, then incredible things can happen. And another person in the Bhagavatam who realized this was Uddhav. Because Uddhav, simply by interacting with the Brajabasis, he knew so much, he had heard so much. Definitely he was Bahushruta, very intelligent, he had heard many things. But his transformation came when he saw the devotion, when he saw the love, when he saw the incredible transcendental madness that the Brajabasis were experiencing in separation from Krishna. Then that transformed him. It transformed him to an extent that he had just gone there, planning to only be there for a very short time. He ended up staying 10 months. He finally came back to Mathura. Krishna heard that he had arrived back in Mathura. Krishna was looking for him everywhere. Where will I find Uddhav, Brihashpati Shishya, the very intelligent, Jnani Bhakta? And you know where Krishna found him? He found him milking a cow in Mathura. Krishna was like, what are you doing? You're milking a cow. Uddhava was transformed by being in Braj. Something had happened to him by seeing the influence, just by the influence of the gopis. So this is very, very powerful. If one learns the art of how to interact with incredibly powerful Vaishnavas, then this can also trigger transformation. So here we're going slowly through all of these. So today we talked about the trigger of impossibility, that one's transformation of heart can be increased if one ensures that their attention is not diverted anywhere else. And therefore, the more one becomes convinced material life is impossible, there's no point even investing any energy there, then one will move forward very quickly. And when one interacts with many, someone who's very powerful, someone who carries Shakti, one who's emanating Bhakti in a very powerful way, even if they don't hear them, just by being around them, something amazing. Darshana pavitra kora eto margun, Narottam says, just by the vision of a Vaishnav, one is purified. And even more so if one hears from a Vaishnav, because interaction by hearing also from a Vaishnav, remember their words are like a razor,
And by hearing their words, it may just cut off all one's material attachments. And that's the transformation by interaction. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so these were some thoughts. Tomorrow we'll do the final triggers. So I just leave some time, 5-10 minutes or so. If there are any questions or comments or anything you'd like to clarify, then okay. So let's see.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for that class. I just want a clarification on what you mean when you say don't get involved with the material energy, because ultimately to perform our services and go about our day-to-day lives, we live in this material world. We need to use this energy to do what we need to do. So if I could get some clarification on that.
Yes, we have to interact with the material energy. We're living in the material world. One should only interact with the material energy really for two purposes: for maintenance and for service. Any interaction with the material energy outside of what is required for one's maintenance and outside of what is required for one's service, know for sure that one will become implicated. Because that's the nature of the material world. So therefore, if you begin to, I think Prabhupada was with one disciple in a zoo or something of that nature, and there was like a small baby lion. So the devotee kind of was walking, and he kind of decided to play coochie-coo, with the baby lion, and then it's like rah. It's like that. Because as soon as you begin engaging with the material energy, you become more and more entangled. It brings more and more complexity. One thing leads to another. And before one knows it, like a ship goes off 1 degree and hours later it's in a different direction. And so one must be very careful. If one already has material things, if one is in a material situation, then they should begin to look at how to connect everything in service. Because any engagement with the material energy outside of one's own maintenance and outside of what is required for one's service has the potentiality to divert one from pure devotional service. That's a heavy statement, maybe. But Prabhupada does say in one purport, let me see if I can get the words right, he says, material extravagance, something to the effect, someone can maybe do a Veda-based search on this. Material extravagance is the beginning of all material problems. Something, maybe someone can find the exact, Prabhupada says it much better, something to that effect. So it's, yes, you must engage with the world, but it's like in India they play that kabaddi. So it's like you have to be like that. You have to somehow be in this world. You have to tag it, but you have to make sure you don't get caught by it. Because Devi here Shagunamai, Mama Maya, Duratyaya is powerful. Do you want to respond to that? Is that, I hope I'm not saying something too impractical, but...
No, not at all. It does make sense, because I think engaging the material energy for service makes complete sense because it's spiritualized, right?
Yeah.
But it does make sense. I do still have a little bit of like with my children, for example, or...
Yeah, it's complex because there's us, there's people around us, there's society, family, friendship. We live in a network. and how much is just what I need for my maintenance. We look at what we need and we say, it seems like I've got more here than I need for my maintenance. Is that a problem? Maybe, but the other way is that we can try and engage everything. But just being in, we have to be careful. Like one devotee, he's something like a investment banker or something. So he does a lot of traveling. So whenever he travels for his work, then they always put him up in the best hotels. He says, this is like the worst thing. He says, because I'm in all these hotels and just this atmosphere almost like ignites material desires. He says, it's like the worst thing. He's like, can't they just give me like a simple bed and breakfast somewhere? Like, they put me up in the Hilton, the Marriott, the, Radisson, Edwardian. It's dangerous. But at the same time, we're living in a social context. It's not just our needs, others have needs. We also come into Krishna consciousness from a certain trajectory, so we can't just immediately like, okay, out with everything. But gradually we have to try to live in a very simple way. Even CEOs appreciate the simplicity. He said, like, apparently people like Mark Zuckerberg and people like this, when they need to make important decisions, then he just... Apparently even people like Mark Zuckerberg, they come into work with the same clothes every day. I mean, not literally the same clothes, but, like, they don't have like a huge... They recognize the world we're living in suffers from decision-making fatigue. We spend so much energy on making so many small decisions because we've created such a complicated material situation that we have no more energy left to focus on what really matters. So simple living, high thinking has value. And in the world they call it satisficing. Anyway, so yes. I see other hands.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I just have a question I was thinking about for a long time. The attachment to children is incredibly big, and all of a sudden, after 20 years, the boys are big, and...
Your boys are definitely big.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know them, they are as tall as Maharaj. And all of a sudden they want to travel the world and move into the Brahmachari ashram, go in Sankirtan, and maybe even change to saffron by Maharaj mercy. And it's so difficult as a mother after 20 years. Can you please give some advice?
Maybe my mom would be the best to answer that question. I don't think so. I'm qualified. We are heartless. Once I was with Sri Dharma Prabhu, and he was, as he was in his final days, and we were listening to Radhanath Maharaj, as his mother and father had come to see him in Chaupati. So for them it's just their son, But I mean, Radhanath Maharaj in Chaupati is... So it's weird for them, it's just like their son, but then seeing how everyone interacts with him, it's like... So they were speaking about it, and then his mom or his father, they said something like, "That's my son's body, but there's a different soul in there." They just couldn't understand it. It was, so we were listening to their parents, his parents, and then Sri Dharma Prabhu looked at me and he said, "Do you realize what we did to our parents when we joined?" I said, "You're the one that told me to do it." He said, "We put them through so much." Yes, it's hard. Therefore, Queen Kunti prays, Sneha Pasham Imam Chindi Dridam Pandu Shivrishnishu. It's interesting. Why does Queen Kunti want to sever her tie of affection for all her family of Vaishnavas? They're all devotees. Why does she want to sever the tie of affection? Isn't it the perfection of life to be attached to a devotee? Yes, but when you're a mother or when you have family relations, there's always the tendency for the family aspect of it to come in and taint that. And therefore she's saying, I don't want to see anyone in a material way anymore. So it's hard. We have to let go. You have to let go. They have to let go. It's hard for them also to let go. Everyone has to let go. Because that's why all the scriptures end with letting go. Krishna teaches Arjuna karma yoga, how to live in the world. Then Krishna teaches Arjuna bhakti yoga, how to love in the world. And then Krishna teaches Arjuna jnana yoga, how to let go. Because we have to let go of everything. Here we're reading Chitraketu, and Chitraketu's son came to him and said, which father are you? Like heavy. When my mom and dad were going through their emotional turmoil when I left, I decided to also narrate this part of the Bhagavatam to them. Which maybe wasn't the wisest choice of the 18,000 verses that I could have shared with them. Which mother and father are you? What? So we have to be kind, but we have to let go. Because in time, why is it that at Vanaprastha 50 you start moving away? Because eventually everything's going to be taken away. So better you let it go rather than it being snatched away. When Parikshit found out that he got cursed, it's explained. Atmajaya sutagara pashudra vinabandushu raje cha vikale nityam viruddham mamatam jaho. Parikshit found out, I'm cursed. What did he do? Jaya, he gave up his companion. Sutta, he gave up his children. Gada, he gave up his palace. Dravina, he gave up his treasury. Pashu, he gave up his animals. Dravina, Bandushu, Raje, he gave up his kingdom. He gave up all of these things. Because he knew it's all going to get taken away. So before it gets taken away, better I let it go. So detachment is necessary, but it's not the goal. Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, he says very beautifully, the goal of life is not to become free from attachment. The goal of life is to become a slave of love. But if we hold on to attachments, then it means that there's some space in our heart which is still reserved for that which can't be awakened to bhakti. And therefore, so anyway, I didn't answer your question, but I just said something that hopefully will help. Thank you. Okay, maybe last one or two questions and then we can stop.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your lecture. I want to ask about interaction. So you said that we should surround ourselves with powerful personalities. And my question is whether this refers to only personalities like Narada Muni or it refers to all devotees. Is this association something that's like Lava Mantra moment is enough, or it should be every day for us to advance? And also, if the devotee is not present, because sometimes people live in remote places, is it enough the books? Because then we also have association. Yeah. So.
Thank you. Yes. yes, we should try to seek out the saintly people. There's another story of Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj that someone came to meet him. So the servant said, no, Maharaj is busy at the moment. So then that servant went in and he spoke to Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj. He said, oh, this person, he was very eager to come and see you. He was very eager to get sadhu sangha. So, but I told him that you're busy now. So Maharaj said, he was eager for sadhu sangha. He said, quick, get my tilak. So then the devotee got the tilak. He said, now I will present myself as a sadhu and I will go to see him just so that I can have the sangha of someone who wants to have sadhu sangha. One must be eager. One must try to find out who is those saintly people, where are they? In the stories of Vedic culture, people would travel thousands of miles to be in the presence of a saintly person because it has some power. Just to be in their vicinity. So yes, Govinda Maharaj nicely says, the world cannot continue spinning unless a pure devotee is present on it. It's a very nice statement actually. Because the purpose of the material world is to take people back to Godhead, and it's only possible through sadhu sangha. So yes, and sadhus are not stereotyped. They may come in all shapes and sizes, in all colors of cloth and ashrams of life and varnas. Sadhureva samantavya samyak vyavasito hisaha. Whoever is determinedly engaged in devotional service is to be considered a sadhu. So we should seek out sincere. Tadira charane sevi bhakta sanevas janame janame hoy ei abhilash. My only desire is life after life may I live with sincere devotees. Sadhu sangha has two meanings. Sadhu can mean a perfect person. So sadhu sangha can mean to associate with an incredibly advanced or perfect person. But sadhu sangha can also mean to perfectly associate with another Vaishnava. And therefore, even if one associates with another Vaishnava who is on a similar level, if they associate in a perfect way, even by that interaction, that sincerity of coming together with sincere, loving exchange, the purpose of sadhu sangha can also be fulfilled. So it's not that transformation by interaction only occurs when one encounters a very advanced soul. Even if one encounters a sadhaka, but a sincere sadhaka, and one interacts with them in a perfect way, that can also have a similar effect. So yes, seek out saintly people. And if one becomes attached, once the Swaminarayan sadhus, they had come to the manor, and I asked them, for you, which is the most important verse in Bhagavatam? And they quoted a verse from the 3rd canto. Prashanga majaram pasham atmana kavayo vidu sa eva sadhushu krito moksha dvaram apavritam. That if you become attached to materialistic people, it will bind you to this world. But that same attachment, when you transfer it to a saintly person, if you become attached to a saintly person, moksha dvaram apavritam, the doors to liberation open. Once Prabhupada was in a pandal, I think somewhere in Brazil, and at the end of the class someone asked, I may not be attached to Krishna, Prabhupada, but what about if I'm attached to you? So they said it maybe in Portuguese or whatever. So Prabhupada looked at it and says, what did he say? So the devotee said, Prabhupada, they're asking, what about if they're not attached to Krishna, but they love you, they're attached to you, Prabhupada said, that is okay. That is okay. Yes, because Krishna say Tomar, Krishna dite paro, Tomara shakati ache. The Vaishnava is carrying Krishna. So if you hold on to the Vaishnava, they'll give you Krishna. Some thoughts? Last question, I guess. Whoever gets it, I don't know.
Thank you for a very inspiring class, Maharaj. Somehow I remained on this topic of detachment, which we were speaking of, and what came to my mind is this saying I was reading a long time ago, which actually comes from the Zen Buddhism, but I was thinking if it's applicable also to us. When they say how at the beginning mountains are mountains and waters are waters, and then as we progress, then we see actually how the mountains are not mountains and waters are not waters. And then again, we realize that actually mountains are mountains and waters are waters. So I was somehow thinking, is this also, I can notice this on small things in my life, that some things I had to be careful about in the beginning of my spiritual path, to stay away from them, how after some years they're just so not important that I don't even notice them anymore, and I can even see some beauty in them again, but it's with completely different perspective. So I was also thinking, how is this applicable to this world and all our relationships of motherhood, of whatever is the topic? Yeah, just something that came to my mind.
Yeah, very nice, yeah. In one sense, if we look at the 3 yoga paths that are given in the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna first talks about karma. Krishna also talks about jnana. And then Krishna also then obviously talks about bhakti. And if you think about those, we could say there is a progression there. Karma is like enjoyment. Jnana is like detachment. And bhakti is then like appropriate engagement. It's like you have the thesis, the antithesis, and then the synthesis. So most people's thesis in the world is, I'm going to enjoy. And then it doesn't work out. And then the antithesis is, I don't want anything to do with this place. And then the synthesis is like, I'm kind of here and I'm not attached to it, but I'm not too much detached from it either. I'll just engage with it appropriately to get to my place. Some people look at the world and they try to enjoy it. Some people are looking away from the world and they're trying to like run away from it. And a devotee just looks kind of like beyond the world. It's just like, yeah, I'm here, but my vision is focused there. So yeah, that's why I was saying that detachment, jnana, is not, it even happens early, like in our spiritual progression. Like in early Krishna consciousness, like in material life, you're trying to enjoy the world. And then in early spiritual life, you just find you can't connect with the world anymore. You just can't relate to people. You can't relate to situations because this heavy jnana comes in. And then eventually you learn how to live in the world as a devotee and go to work and have your family and engage with it appropriately. So yeah, but it's interesting that detachment and going through that little bit of pulling you away from enjoyment is a necessary part of the journey, but then eventually it kind of comes back to and therefore detachment is a fascinating, because it's not an anga of bhakti, but at the same time we can't ignore its importance in our journey. But remember, we're not trying to just become detached from all the attachments of this world. We're trying to become slaves of love. That's the real thing. And that we shouldn't forget. All right, I think I'll stop here. Thank you so much. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.